It's only the 10th day of 2024 and Honda has already gotten the people talking. What's up guys? Welcome to the Breakdown where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. So just recently, Honda has unveiled that they would be going back to their origin roots, and so much so, even going to change their logo. Now, what does that have to do with the EV space that they're trying to get into? I'll get into that into the video. But Honda is really trying to focus their commitment to carbon neutrality by 2050, and this is just the first step of many in which they try to rope us in and get us to basically get on the bandwagon. And in this video, I want to explore a little of analysis behind the Mission Zero concept, because unlike Toyota's Beyond Zero concept, it's similar but different, and I won't go into the differences as much as I will focus on Honda's particular take on their drive into the new world of EVs. So with that being said, stick around and stay tuned because you are now watching The Breakdown. Oh yeah, and Happy New Year. I forgot to tell y'all that. So getting into the meat and potatoes, the EV space has been rather interesting. Most manufacturers have truly focused their efforts to really get us as the consumers to be geared and prepared for the EV world. Now, I've done several videos explaining the importance of infrastructure and how we're just not really ready to go all up and above on EVs, but nobody seems to hear that. But if you want to go check that video out, go click it right here. But what really happens is that a lot of the car manufacturers have decided collectively to align with the EPA ratings, as well as the government agencies that are kind of pushing them into that direction. So many of them have stopped the resistance and simply embraced the new change. And with this new change, Honda has also made a change to their logo into really getting us into the hoorah, I guess, because we get excited about logos for whatever reason. It's always like a big thing. I'm going to go over the logo change briefly, and I'm also going to go over the mission to zero, as well as the race to electrification and how it's been critically received by the consumers. So I'll go ahead and leave those chapters in the video. But with that said, let's go ahead and get to the logo. But Honda wants to remind us of its roots as a startup company, as it originally began back in 1959, and up until the 1980s was a slow but modest growing car company. And they really gained their popularity through small, practical, reliable, and efficient vehicles, starting with the N600 all the way up into the Accord. Now, I won't go into the ins and outs of the history of Honda. We've been there, we've done that. And I actually have a video explaining their identity crisis. But this Honda Zero is the pinnacle of what it means to be finite and intentional of where you want to go as a car company. Now, I will say that it's a bit gimmicky in my opinion, because I still believe that Honda has the capability to be the standout from the crew, and they always have been one of the more quirkier car companies because they are an engineering company, unlike Toyota, which is more of a marketing company. Both make cars, manufacture those cars, but they really have their differences in spec. Now, the logo does give an homage back to the old days of Honda when they first debuted their way back into the States. And it is sleek, it is crisp, it's simple, and that's kind of where a lot of car companies are going. Recently, Stellantis did something similar with Dodge, and so as well as Cadillac, which we've seen a lot more car companies slim down their logos. Overall, I do think that it is a little bit too simple, not giving us another pizzazz hoorah. But let's be honest, nobody really cares about the logo. What we care about is what the company plans to produce. Now, in this particular Honda Zero concept that they have released, they've released two. They released two, and this was at the CES 2024 show. And there was two that were debuted, which was the Saloon and the Space-Hub. Now, these are pretty much things we kind of expect because Honda gives us really good concepts. They never really give us exactly what we want, but they usually get very close to it, especially production models. But Honda has really done a great job in focusing their efforts toward electrification and making more things hybrid. But in lieu of trying to get to that electrification, we've seen a lot of things go left. One of them being the drop of the 2-liter turbo from the Honda Accord, making it a hybrid only exclusive, and the 2-liter turbo being reserved basically for the Acura lineup as well as the Civic Type R. Unfortunately, I do believe that the electrification will kind of damper what people know about Honda and what they expect from Honda. In a lot of cases, the electrification route is something we've never seen before, and that kind of ties into where Honda's trying to go with simplifying this logo to give themselves back into that startup feel, to where they feel like they're starting over, we got the people going. But in the reality of things, the logo is just a signifier of where they plan to point their origins. While they try to focus a lot of their efforts into creating all of their model lineups to be electrified, the reality is that they don't want to go fully electric. They would rather ease their way into the hybrid sector and would rather ease their way into electrification because, like I've said before, we're just not simply ready. And Honda, like Toyota, like several other manufacturers, have vocalized that they would rather give us options of hybrid, fully electric, as well as hydrogen vehicles, because alternative fuels are the future, but they aren't necessarily the best focal point for just one option. This push for electrification comes from the idea of carbon neutrality by 2050, which basically says we are trying to push our way out of the climate change crisis and push our way into a more mobile and futuristic sense of the car community. The curious thing I have about this is that in past performance with electrification, Honda has not necessarily done the best job of marketing their electrified vehicles. Even though we know about the Civic Hybrid, we know about the Insight, and we know about different cars like the NSX, nobody really bought them. And this electric push and mission to zero is going to be very, very curious for Honda, because they are trying to sell us, the consumer, that they are going to be a different Honda than what we know. With the Saloon and Space-Hub concepts, I can almost attest that this is an attempt, and it kind of gives me some resonance of what the Honda E was overseas and the hype around that, which I really still believe we should have got that. But let's be honest, in the world of SUVs and crossovers, nobody wants a small compact. Overall, in terms of past performance with electrification, Honda really has given us some really good gems, because the NSX was almost perfect in its performance, in its style, and its relic back to the older days. Not quite the VTEC innovation that we once knew, which, by the way, VTEC will be probably one of my more, I'm very curious to see how they're going to integrate VTEC marketability into the electric space, because nobody ever saw VTEC at the time that was introduced back in the early 90s, and so it was something to be marveled at. But now we're in a different space, so I wonder what kind of gimmick Honda's going to come up with now, because everybody has a gimmick. The performance of the electrified vehicles didn't really perform well, especially because they still wasn't adopted that well by consumers. But that's not really the point here. The point is that Honda is giving us a very different profile to themselves, and I love the focus, the 5 core values that they really focused on in their new design language, which is essentially to be thin, light, and wise, which I don't know who came up with that. Sometimes car companies come up with corny shit. They're all gimmick, but I'm okay with a gimmick as long as you can sell me on the gimmick. As opposed to many of their other past cars, such as the Prelude, such as the Civic and the Accord and the CRVs, which we all know the SUVs are always going to trump because we're just in a state of SUVs. But consumer reception from Honda as of late in the last decade has been probably significantly better, as we've gone from the bland, lackluster of the 2008 crisis, because really from 2008 to 2015, essentially that was just a crisis. And from 2016 on, seen an evolution in their design and becoming much more stylish, much more dynamic, even though I got some questionability about that Pilot, but whatever. I will say this, in terms of consumer reception, Honda has not really given us the best proposition. The value proposition was not always the best, because Honda's, unlike the popular opinion, have never really been cheap. They've been affordable, but never really been cheap. And in some cases, you've seen a lot of consumers opt out of Honda hybrid / electric vehicles for something a little more attainable and affordable, such as Volvo, such as Tesla, and even Toyota. And so the consumer reception has always proven that Honda doesn't really make money on hybrids and EVs. So this Mission Zero and Race to Carbon Neutrality is going to really emphasize their commitment to really pushing us in that direction. And I'm almost curious to know that with that, they are going to give us the soul that we once knew about Hondas from the 80s and 90s. With that being said, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about Honda's logo change, if you give a damn or not. But more importantly, where you think they will go as a company as they begin to evolve into the EV space. And with that being said, feel free to leave a comment below. And until the next video, I will see you guys later.